Okay, we're keeping an eye on markets for you and your money. Here's a live look at the Dow, up about 150 points. That's 0.6%. This week, though, markets were down over fears of a trade war triggered by President Trump's latest tariffs on imports. Another thing that's beginning to worry investors, though, is the timing of the next recession. There's actually a powerful tool used to measure when one might be on the horizon, and Wall Street is starting to notice. By the way, I don't want to alarm you with this. I just want to tell you about it. It's called a yield curve. In the simplest terms, it's a plot that compares interest rates offered on U.S. Treasury bonds. When investors expect the economy to grow, longer-term bonds, see, this is 30 years out here, tend to carry a higher rate than shorter-term bonds do. This is a normal yield curve. But when this yield curve goes flat, that means rates on both kinds of bonds, short and long duration, are about the same. This is the first sign to an investor that an economic slowdown may be on the horizon. People are betting on something like this happening. Now, lately, long-term bonds have been slow to rise. And at the same time, the Federal Reserve has been raising short-term rates, and that has resulted in the flattening that we're talking about. Now, if the yield curve continues to move in this direction, long-term interest rates could actually be lower than short-term interest rates. If you go to put your money into an interest-bearing account, you'll understand this, right? You should get more if you leave your money in for longer than you do. But if this starts to happen, this is called an inverted yield curve. The last time we saw one of these yield curves inverted, by the way, was right before the last recession hit in late 2007. In fact, this is the important part. Every single recession, these are all recessions, these thin green lines, these are recessions. Every single recession or economic slowdown for the last 60 years has been preceded by one of these inverted yield curves. That's why some economists are starting to take notice. Again, I don't want to alarm you. I'm just giving you stats here. The gap between a 2-year and a 10-year Treasury bond is about 1/3 of a point. The last time we saw that, the worst recession since the Great Depression followed soon after. Now, there were a lot of reasons for this recession that are not in place right now, but this is what investors and economists are actually watching right now. Joining us now is James Pethokoukis. He's a columnist and policy analyst at the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank. James, good to see you, my friend. I want to just put this into context, because I can see the tweets coming already. Velshi and Rule warning of a recession. That's not true.
Listen, if you get this, if you do that and you get it right, you can have a newsletter business for the rest of your life. It'll be fantastic. People have done more with less. No, listen, it is an indicator. And here's another one. Generally, every recession has been preceded by the Federal Reserve raise interest rates, tightening the money supply. So whenever you have the Federal Reserve sort of in action, there's always a risk that they will make a mistake. They will raise interest rates too far, too fast, and we'll get a recession. So I think it's something to be aware of. Yep. We should also be aware of that right now the economy is accelerating to perhaps 4% growth and perhaps the fastest growth we've seen in a while. So you can't forget about that part, too.
So to that exact point, if we have extraordinary growth, if we're at full employment, how could we not raise rates? I understand that central banks around the world had to nurture and hold the economy like a little baby in their bosom.
And keep rates really low so that people would borrow and expand their businesses and spend.
But you can't possibly have the president saying this is the greatest economy since World War II. Oh, by the way, don't raise rates.
Well, I mean, there are some economists who would say that because they just don't see that there's a lot of inflation. The reason you would raise rates is to sort of prevent inflation from taking off, because once inflation kind of gets its grips in the economy, it's tough to let go. You're worried about sort of financial imbalances. So, I mean, that you can make that argument that you shouldn't raise rates, though most central bankers obviously think that the risk of inflation is, I mean, they're bankers. That's what they worry about. So they're starting to raise rates gradually. And the concern is that they will make a mistake, and then you'll get a recession.
How about concerns about the tax cuts? We were all excited about the corporate tax cuts and trickle down, but we were just walking through it, and we're finding almost no actual raises happening at companies. It's stock buybacks and one-time bonuses. Do you see trickle down in effect?
Listen, if the traditional Republican theory of how tax cuts work is true, then you really shouldn't see much impact yet. That is a long-term thing, more long-term investment over a number of years. You get higher productivity growth, higher wages. That's not how Republicans sold the tax cut. They sold it as giving the economy a boost right away. And indeed, we should be seeing faster growth. And there's a lot of Wall Street firms who also expect to see an acceleration in wage growth. But again, is that long-term growth? Are we doing something fundamentally to change the growth path of the U.S. economy? That remains to be seen. So I don't think you can draw any long-term conclusions whether this has suddenly transformed the so-so economy into sort of a superstar economy.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.